Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Zafar, and in this video we're going to talk more about JavaScript functions. So in the previous video we talked about the basics of functions, we talked about what functions are and why they're super useful in programming, and we talked about the basic syntax and the foundation of how we write functions. And in this video we're going to talk about how we pass input data to our functions and how we return data back from our functions. So to quickly review, we use the function keyword to let JavaScript know that we're about to write a function or we're writing a function, and we give it a name. So suppose I want to name my function greeting, and the idea here is that I want my function to show a greeting message. So I can do a console.log, and I'll say, hi Zafar, nice to meet you. Now to make sure everything went well, I can just use the function name to make sure that the console knows about my function. And remember, if you use the name without the parentheses, you're not actually executing the function. You're just asking the console if it knows anything with the name greeting, and it tells you, yes, I know a function, and here's the F for function, and it prints it out. But if I want to execute it, I use these parentheses right here, and notice it executes it, and it says, hi Zafar, nice to meet you. The problem here though is even if I keep executing it, the string or the greeting message will not change. The goal is I want to supply, right? I want to pass in different names, and I want my greeting function to work with any name, right? I want it to say, hi Tom, nice to meet you, or hi John, nice to meet you, and so on and so forth. So we do that by supplying the name. And let's see how we do that. So we use the function keyword, and I'm redefining the greeting function, and I'm gonna put name here, right? So in the previous video we didn't talk about the parentheses, but I pass in a name, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But I'm gonna do console.log hello and plus name plus nice to meet you. So in this case, name will be a string, and remember we talked about string concatenation, so I'm kind of like smashing all these strings together to make one big string. And to make sure everything went well, I can use the function name. So here's my new function, new greeting function, and I can do greeting, and now I can pass in any name I want, like for example Tom. And notice now it says hello Tom, nice to meet you, and I can pass in another name like Alice, and it says hello Alice, nice to meet you. So let's talk about how this works. Alright, so now I can execute the greeting function with 3 names, and my function will say hello to all of them. So, and notice that we supply parameters as a comma separated list in between the parentheses right after the name of the function. Now if I want to execute the function, I need to use the parentheses, and here I can pass in arguments, okay? So we call these arguments. So I'm going to pass in Tom, John, and Alice. Alright, so notice now it says hello Tom, hello John, hello Alice. And one thing I want to point out, if you skip one argument, but the function gets more parameters than what you supply, notice we get hello undefined. So because this greeting function expects 3 parameters, name1, name2, name3, and we supply 2 of them, right? So Tom will be substituted in name1, and John will be substituted in name2, but there's no third value. It will just be undefined, which is the absence of value. We talked about how to pass an input, right, to our functions, and right now let's talk about how we pass data out from our functions, or how we get output, right, from our functions. So as a quick example, this is a perfect example as an ATM machine, right? So when you go to the ATM machine, you give it your card, right? That can be a form of input, and you interact with the ATM machine, and then it returns, if you're doing a withdrawal, right, it returns the money as physical money that you can get to keep, right? So how do we return values from our function? So let's do function ATM. So I'm going to call it ATM. It's going to be super simple. So we use the return keyword in JavaScript, the return keyword, to return any value. So in this case, I'm just going to return $100 or the string $100. So now, notice now if I use my function and I execute it, I'll get my $100. So this is equivalent to you going to the ATM and getting that $100. One point of confusion that at least I remember when I was learning about all this, beginners often confuse the return keyword with console.log. Okay, and let's see what I mean. So we've seen here that I have the function ATM. Let me define another function called ATM2. And I'm just going to console.log the $100. If I call ATM2, I made a typo. So if I call ATM2, you still see the $200. So you might think, oh, it's the same thing as this, you know, because we're seeing the value. But there's actually a very, very important difference. The first ATM function that we wrote right here actually gives you the money, like physically, like returns you the money. It's equivalent to if you go to an ATM and it physically gives you the money. And the function with ATM2, right, it only shows you that money on the screen, but it doesn't actually give you the money. So maybe that's the intended use, but most likely if you actually went to the ATM, you want the money back. So the function ATM2 doesn't actually give you the money. And let's prove that by capturing the value, the returned value from our function in a variable. Okay, so I'm going to use the let keyword, and remember that's how we create variables in JavaScript. And I'll call it value1. And I'm going to call my first ATM function, and I'm going to use my value1. And notice that we have that $100 in value1, right? Then notice that the reason why you've seen undefined here is because this is not an expression, this is a statement. It's an assignment statement that doesn't return anything, but don't worry about it. But the important thing to see right here is that value1 actually has the $100, so we physically have it in our hands. But the problem with value2, with ATM2, right? Notice that it printed $100, but if I try to use value2, it says undefined. So let's try to understand that. So in this case, I called my ATM2, and what it does, if I scroll up, it just prints the string $100 to the screen, but it doesn't give it back to you. It just kind of shows you the ATM on the screen, but it doesn't give you the actual money. So when you go and try to use your money, right, it says undefined because there's no value there. Whereas in ATM, the first one, right, we actually use the return JavaScript keyword to, you know, it's equivalent to physically returning money from the ATM that you get to keep, right? So in this statement right here, I captured the return or the money from the ATM into the variable, and I can use it from the variable value1. I hope this video was helpful. In the future, we're definitely going to talk about more exciting topics like branching and loops. So don't forget to like and subscribe for new videos every day.